The Black Series is over 10 years old at this point, and like most toy lines, it got much better over time. Advancements in 3D printing and digital sculpting have allowed for much more complex articulation, more detailed faces, more details on the figures, and an overall product that just looks and feels so much better than what we saw 10 years ago. Even when comparing figures from 2020 to 2023, we see a massive improvement in all the things that I mentioned before. The release of the new Mandalorian in particular has gotten both me and a lot of other people talking and thinking about what figures from the past could really use a complete head-to-toe retool like we see here. And at the end of the video, I'll go through my personal collection and show you some of the solutions that I found to these dated figures, whether it be customs or other toy lines. And don't forget to give this video a like. Let's get started. As you can imagine, with any new toy line, the first characters that they usually go after usually involve the most popular, iconic characters. And so with the case of the Black Series, some of the earliest figures we saw were the original trilogy main crew, starting with Luke Skywalker in his farm boy look, probably the most iconic character and look in Star Wars. We saw him updated on a Power of the Force retro card, kind of getting some of that nostalgia with an updated face print, but this figure is still nowhere near close to what we deserve from our main hero at this point. I may be a little biased for obvious reasons, but I understand that he needed to sit in the land speeder, but those cheap soft goods just don't hold up. He's sometimes referred to as Napkin Luke by some people in the toy community. Unfortunately, Princess Leia in her most iconic outfit suffers from the same fate here with these soft goods. She was re-released in the archive line with updated face printing, definitely looks better than this original release that you see here, but unfortunately it just does not really bring this figure up to today's standards. The Han Solo re-release isn't as bad, but he still has that giraffe neck, just the articulation and the pain, everything about this and sculpt is just really dated. And I feel like if these three were re-released on 2024 bodies with just all of the new tooling and amazing face printing and sculpting that they have nowadays, these would just be three figures that you just couldn't put down. TVC collectors have been asking for the original crew to be updated, and a few months ago they got a Princess Leia pipeline, which is an official confirmation from Hasbro that it is in the works. I hope that we see something similar in the Black Series. This next figure is actually quite beloved as it is and goes for a lot on the aftermarket, which I think incentivizes Hasbro to look into re-releasing this and possibly retooling this. I think it's actually a pretty decent figure, but seeing a Captain Rex with the modern articulation that we saw on the 2023 Clone Troopers would be really amazing. And I think that's why his name popped up so much on the poll that I did on my community tab. The fact that we don't have a proper Anakin Skywalker in the Black Series is just absolutely mind-blowing to me. This figure came out very early on in the line and was re-released so long ago now at this point, I think at least 5 years ago in the archive line, and even though it's been updated, it just really does not compare to the figures, especially even the Jedi figures that came out a few years ago with the Attack of the Clones line. This thing in the Obi-Wan as well are just so dated, just the way their robes are all just one chunky sculpt with that really hard plastic. The fact that this Obi-Wan was released last year in the archive line is just such a sin. I think we are past the point of this figure being the same price as a lot of the brand new figures coming out this year, and I have no doubt that these would sell well if retooled and re-released in 2024 or beyond. In 2020, we got a Snowspeeder Luke that was just an amazing figure, and that was 4 years ago at this point, whereas the X-Wing Luke is being re-released this year in the archive line internationally, just proving that this is just such an iconic and classic character. It's really a shame to see this getting re-released on the same body, especially since this is a body that can be reused multiple times. We need a Carson Teva in the line. We got a Wedge Antilles and an Antok Merrick also on this same body, but I personally would buy all the re-releases of these figures on a newer body because this flight suit is just so beautiful. It would be really fun to have a figure that actually moved the way that we are used to figures moving now. The Return of the Jedi Boba Fett was such a triumph of engineering and technology. It's really an amazing figure. It was everyone's #1 figure of the year when it came out, I think around 2021 or 22, but the Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett was one of the very first figures ever released in the Black Series. His elbows barely bend. You know it's bad when the promo photos even look awkward. We may have to see it released as a deluxe figure. Maybe they can throw in a couple extra accessories just to match the cost of tooling nowadays. I'm gonna get called a shill for this, but if you look at inflation from January 2013, around when the Black Series started up until last month, you can see that $20 back then is worth about $26 something now. And inflation has really hit production, manufacturing, and shipping really hard, so I think it's pretty amazing that we are getting these figures for only $25 nowadays. especially when the quality of the figures has gone from this to this for basically the same price. So I swear Hasbro's not paying me to say all that, but that's pretty much why you'll never hear me complain about pricing on my channel. Okay, let's move on to Yoda from both The Empire Strikes Back and the prequels. He's got his lightsaber here like he does in the prequels, and then this was the one that was released with the Dagobah 2-pack, a little bit shorter, a little bit more accurately scaled, still with these kind of wonky soft goods. I think that we need not only a prequel Yoda, but a retooled Empire Yoda as well. For such a important character, probably one of the most recognizable fictional characters in the world, I think he deserves a better figure. I was surprised to see Bosk come up as often as he did in your answers to my question about which figures you want to see retooled, not because he doesn't need a retool, he definitely does. It's a very dated sculpt, and the elbows have barely any articulation and he can barely hold his gun, but I was surprised just because I don't hear his name thrown around that often anymore. I don't really see him on too many people's shelves. I don't know why, it's just one of those figures that every once in a while I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot that we had this figure in the line. But if properly retooled, this would be one of those figures that you just can never put down. Speaking of bounty hunters, one name that came up constantly was IG88/IG11. When isolated in pictures, they really don't look that bad, but when you bring in the other figures and do a comparison, you can see that he is just way underscaled. And when IG11 was revealed in The Mandalorian, they just put him back on that same IG88 body and re-released him, and these figures just do not hold up. Even when General Grievous was released, people were pretty disappointed at how short he was. This figure was re-released just last year in the Gaming Greats line with some very slight battle damage, not really much of a re-release, and he doesn't come with his cape anymore. But overall, this figure just does not hold up, and I think this is the reason that the Magna Guards are also quite undersized. I was surprised to see how many of you want a proper C-3PO from A New Hope. This was released in the archive line with the silver leg as we see him originally in the movie, and later releases of this figure like the archive 2-pack with Chewbacca, he has much better articulation at the elbows instead of having none at all, and some nice battle damage paint applications. But it sounds like just a classic silver leg 3PO with the new articulation is desired. Another one that comes up a lot is Jango Fett. I totally agree. This body is just so not fun to pose. If you got the new Paz Vizsla, you know exactly what to expect since they reused that body even in 2023, which was so disappointing to see. This was re-released with a much better face, but it's still not up to par. And for such a fan favorite character, I would love to see a deluxe version of this, maybe with the poncho. But if they put this on a body that felt as nice as the new Mando, I would 100% rebuy it. And the last one on my list for today is Princess Leia as Jabba's prisoner, with the new Jabba the Hutt releasing in the Black Series for the 40th anniversary of Return of the Jedi. There just feels to be a missing piece on the shelf. This figure is so dated, the double jointed legs look terrible, the soft goods just don't hold up, and the face is just a mess. So now we're going to take a look at my collection here, and I'm going to show you some of the solutions that I've come up with or purchased for a lot of these missing pieces in the Black Series. There are a lot of import figures or customs kind of filling these gaps here, so unfortunately this does get kind of expensive, so that's why I would love to see these figures released at retail price. Luckily, SH Figuarts has done all of the A New Hope main characters at a time when they were just totally at their peak. I think that the face printing and the engineering on all of these figures is just 10 out of 10. I don't think the Han Solo looks exactly like him, and I did have to paint kind of the goldy hair on Luke Skywalker here just to be a little bit more of that dusty brown that he has, but I do think that these look great, and I'm really happy to have these. I don't know if I would collect Star Wars in the same way that I do if these figures weren't available, because without these on my shelf, if I was just stuck with the Black Series ones, it would take away so much of the enjoyment of kind of like building out these shelves. And this is actually the Black Series R2 and C-3PO. I did do a bit of weathering on both of them to kind of show how they look when they first make it to Tatooine. Next, we have Anakin and Obi-Wan from Revenge of the Sith. This is actually the Black Series Anakin body with a custom head by Fett Clone on both of these, and then a 3D printed Jedi robe that I designed, and then the Obi-Wan is on the SH Figuarts body, so the heads are properly scaled for those figures in particular. This hand here is from a Marvel Legends figure. I still think a new sculpt for Anakin is necessary, and this Obi-Wan has just gotten so expensive on the aftermarket. Next we have my Captain Rex with a Fett Clone head. I did do a matte spray on him with some Mr. Super Clear just to bring that shine down and make it look a little bit more like it does in the show, as well as the newer clone figures that have much more of a matte finish. I love the way that this Jango looks with this custom head by Nuno, especially with the custom Boba Fett next to him on the Omega body, but as the body is still not really fun to pose, it's just super stiff, just the Black Series body. But these are Figuarts Yodas. I was lucky enough to to get these before the price shot up to like almost $200. But for now, it's like the only viable option for both Phantom Menace and Attack of the Clones. Mafex put out an amazing IG-11 figure, so did Figuarts, but the Mafex one is much more attainable. I think I've seen it around like $50 or $60 recently. Amazing articulation, just beautiful engineering, so fun to play with and to look at, and it fits really nicely on the Black Series speeder bike in case you want to recreate that scene. I actually bought 2 of these when they first came out. I was supposed to get one for a friend that no longer wanted it after I couldn't cancel the pre-order, so I finally convinced myself to open it up and put on IG-88's accessories and put him on my Empire shelf here. I can't bring myself to do a dark wash on it to paint it just yet because I still can like resell this someday if I need to, but for now it's close enough and it looks way better and much more accurate than the IG-88 that was there previously. And if you noticed, right next to him is the Empire Strikes Back Boba Fett, also from Mafex. This is probably one of the most affordable Mafex Star Wars figures that has this quality. This was going for like $200 a couple years ago, and luckily they released it, I think around sometime last year. I've seen it as low as like $45 at certain toy stores. It is just a little oversized compared to the Black Series, but definitely looks beautiful on the shelf. This Princess Leia was made for me by my friend Tim from Tim's Toys, who, along with all the other customizers I mentioned, will be linked in the description below, so go ahead and check out their Instagrams. But I did a big Jabba's Palace diorama a couple years ago, right around when I kind of met Tim, and I just knew I needed one of these on the shelf, and he does take commissions on these last I checked. And then for General Grievous, we have the Bandai model kit with a cape that I bought on eBay a few years ago. I don't think the seller is making them anymore, but it fits really nicely on this figure. It's kind of hard to see here, but this stands a few inches taller than the Black Series one. He's a little bit low on the hexagon stand here, but he definitely towers over the original release, and I really love seeing this one on the shelf. Unfortunately, he still has the same stability issues as the Black Series one. So if there's a figure on this list that you really want to update, you do have options. They just do get way more expensive than just buying a $25 Black Series figure, and I would always love to see the cheaper option available for both myself and everyone else. With so many of these crucial characters being the heart of so many people's collections, I think just like having a proper, especially Luke, Leia, and Han, would really bring some new collectors to the line, and the more the merrier. The more people we have buying these things, the better they will continue to be. The update of R2-D2 and The Mandalorian this year gave me a lot of hope for what we might see in the future, especially with the anniversary of Revenge of the Sith coming up, the Phantom Menace anniversary. Just, you never know what's going to happen, and I'm pretty sure this Mando is going to be selling really well. I've been hearing everyone raving about it, and I just hope they get the hint and know that if it's that much better than the original release, that we will buy it. Hey, if you made it this far into the video, I think you might like some of the other content that you see on your screen right now. Maybe consider subscribing if you have not already. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time.